All right, welcome to session 3 of making your own comic books. I'm Jonathan Worth. So last time we looked at how to plan out your comic, and we looked a little bit about how to make a rough draft and how to lay out your comic. Where I showed you kind of my process for doing that, as well as scripting and writing dialogue. This is my pencil. These are my pencils for the final draft. And some of it's pretty light because I wasn't using this guy. I was using a lighter pencil. In this session, I want to talk about a few different things, including kind of sketching, showing emotions through your characters, as well as just kind of the nitty-gritty of what kind of tools that you want to use. So let's get into it. So as far as what tools that you want to use, let's talk about paper. Now, when I'm starting out and I'm sketching, making notes, I like to use newsprint because I really like the way that the pencil looks on it. It's cheap, which is really nice. You can also use other cheaper papers. I mean, you can use whatever you want. You can use notebook paper. I personally like to use unlined paper just so I can kind of sketch and do whatever I want on it. You can use just standard like copier paper. Now, I don't like to use copier paper for my final draft because it's kind of flimsy, and if I'm erasing or making marks, it's easy to like crease and to tear, and that doesn't look good on a final draft. Though Art Spiegelman and his classic Maus, which is about the Holocaust and is really good, is actually my first look into nonfiction graphic novels. I actually bought this when I was in high school on a trip to DC, and I bought it at the Holocaust Museum. Spiegelman has been a kind of an inspiration of mine. I really like his style. He did, I believe that he did all of this on just regular like bond paper, copy paper, which I think is pretty incredible. For me, I'm not going to do that. If that's what you have and that's what you have available, then great. Just, take care of it, make sure it doesn't wrinkle or tear or whatever. For this, I'm actually just using cardstock, which is a bit weightier than just regular copy paper. If you want to get really fancy, you can use Bristol board, which is very heavy. I'd suggest getting the smooth type, but this is what the professionals use when if they're not doing it digitally. If you're doing your stuff digitally, that's great. That's fine. That has its place. I've done some stuff digitally, and it can be really good. It's a really good tool. My encouragement is for you to get to know how to do it by hand. Hand lettering, laying out by hand, penciling, inking. Say there's something about the human touch of doing it by hand that I really appreciate, and I think we need a little bit more of. Right now, I want to talk a little bit about emotions and how to convey emotions in a character. Your characters are going to say something with your face that they may not be able to say with their words. Or even, they could say something with their words and their face says something different. So you can do things with emotions and with faces that you can't always do with words. Okay, I'm going to start with 4 simple faces. I'm just going to make them round faces, okay? I'm going to just use some simple guidelines to show the middle of the face. Gives me point of reference. I'm going to draw the eyes, right? it's one of the temptations, especially when you're starting out, is to draw the eyes too high on the head. So you're actually drawing them up on the forehead, right? That's not actually how faces work. Eyes tend to actually go much closer to the center of the face. And so we've got our 4 faces here. Sorry, smiley face. So we have our 4 faces here, and I like to use pretty simple lines to convey my characters. I mean, you can draw things really realistically, and that's awesome. For me, I don't always have a lot of time, and I like to be able to convey as much emotion as I can through as few lines as I can. And I think that's something that cartooning does well, is you can convey a lot through simple lines. So I'm going to start with eyebrows. So I think the eyebrows and the in the mouth can actually convey quite a bit. So I'm going to draw a series of eyebrows, right? So these are downward slanted, these are arching upward. And you can do all kinds of things. I mean, you can have one that's, I mean, you can have kind of a blank expression, or you can have kind of the eyebrows aren't arching either way. They're not slanting either way. And this shows a look of maybe some frustration, not necessarily anger, but frustration. You can add a little bit more detail. And now there's a look of suspicion. And you're just doing that with a few simple lines, right? So let's go back to this. So these downturned eyebrows are kind of closed emotions. And what I mean by closed emotions is that they're not open to, there's not an openness or vulnerability to them. They're pushing back. And so you can have a frown that shows anger. There can be a smile, and that shows just like evil. I'm not sure if I've ever seen someone actually smile like this. But I think we all understand what that means. They have evil intents. They're smiling, but there's also like a closed offness to them. There's kind of an angry smile. I don't know if that's a thing, but just with a few lines, they're showing that someone has evil intent. Here, someone is angry. Now with these eyebrows that are kind of arched up, there's a certain openness to it, an openness and vulnerability of feeling. So you can have kind of a downturned mouth, a slight frown, and this person looks a little put off, maybe a little disappointed, kind of sad. Now, if there's a smile, this person is hopeful and looks happy. And you can do all kinds of things. You can, if you make the mouth open, then they're surprised. So it goes from sadness and disappointment to surprise. If you open their mouth, now they're openly angry and showing a bit of rage. If this happy person who is, is happy but has a slight smile, if you open their mouth, actually, no, they look kind of surprised. If we do that again and there's like a big smile, they are delighted. This person is delighted. So you have like surprise, and if you have just a slight smile, then they're happy, they're amused, but this person is delighted. This person, say they're showing teeth. They are, what is this person doing? This person looks like they're grinding their teeth. They look very uncomfortable. So yeah, just with a few lines, you can convey a lot of different types of emotion, and you can play around with it. I mean, I'd encourage you just to take out a sheet of paper and start sketching and just using different lines. Big smiles, big frowns, people baring their teeth. That's angry. So yeah. I mean, even like giving kind of a blank face um, is shows some emotion. Like this person does not know what to say. And if you want some inspiration, open your phone and look at some emojis, because actually emojis I think do a pretty good job at showing emotion, as their name implies. So yeah, that's just a little bit on showing emotion through a very few lines. All right, next we are going to talk about inking. Now, when I ink, I like to use a couple different types of pens for outlines and for borders. I like to use a brush pen. Here is a brush pen. It can do thick or thin lines. There can be a lot of variation on it, because it's like a brush. And then, put the cap back on. And then for thin lines and for lettering, and for detail and hatching and cross hatching, I like to use either an 03 or an 05 pen, which is pretty thin. An 03 is smaller. You can even get like an 01, which is thinner yet. I know an artist who really likes to use 01s, and he does great work. For me, it's a little too thin. I like 03s and 05s. So let's take a little bit of look at just inking, and I'll walk through you with this on page 1. So let's begin inking, right? Maybe zoom in a little bit. Okay. So again, I like to use this gridded ruler. It's very helpful. And I'm going to use a ruler to outline the borders. There we go. And you can just turn your paper. And I'm doing this, let's just do this one panel, because we were working on this panel earlier, right? Okay. And just turn it so that's easy. It's easy to draw for you. You don't have to keep your paper in one position. Okay, and so we have done our border. And now let's move on to our next bit, which would be outlining some of these things. And so I'm going to start at the top. I'm going to start at the top and work my way down, because I don't want to smudge. So I'm going to use the scrap piece of paper to lay my hand on, so that I'm not smudging anything. So I'm going to work on outside lines. And like I said, with these brush pens, there can be a bit of variation in line thickness. Sometimes you like that, sometimes you don't. If you want something a little smoother, maybe just use like a thicker pen, like a felt tip pen or something like that. But I kind of like the look of the variation. Okay, so I'm just outlining. I'm not putting in really any detail. I'm going to save the thinner pin for that. I've got these fingers here. I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to kind of outline, and I'm not going to do the fingers because fingers can be tough. All right, here's the hem of the shirt. Here are the shorts, the legs, the shoes. I've given Darcy like some high tops. I based Darcy's style kind of on one of my daughters who's really into sports, and I could see her wearing an outfit like this. And so we can go back in and fill in some detail. I'm going to give Darcy this little moon insignia on her hat and kind of tie it into, I mean, it kind of looks like a cookie with a bite taken out of it, which connects back to the cookies. It looks like a moon, which connects to the time that we're basing this on. So Darcy just has, you know, kind of an open face, an open emotion right here. Trying to show some innocence, like I am innocently asking for cookies. So I'm going to show her kind of like clasping her wrist. Okay. And fill in a little bit more, have some pockets right there. I'm going to give her some like tube socks that she's wearing with stripes on it. Oh, I also want to give her a ringer shirt, which is like, has a couple stripes on it and is like a V-neck. It has like a different color, like hem on the neck, border on the neck. And then let's throw in some detail on the shoes, make the soles here, put a stripe, just some details here, right? In the laces. All right. And then also what we're going to do is I'm going to give her dark hair. So I'm going to draw some parallel lines like this. This is hatching. And I'm going to do some cross hatching. So I'm going to draw lines across it. Right? Also want the front of her hat to be dark, so as not to blend into her hair. I'm just going to do simple lines. Also going to give her a dark t-shirt. So we don't want too much white space. I had an art teacher in high school that said, you know, when you're drawing in black and white, you want you kind of want to split 50-50. You want as much white space as you have dark space. And that gives some balance to it. So I want to make sure to have, I mean, you don't want it to be too dark where you can't really differentiate anything, right? A little darkness to her shoes here and there. Okay, that's cool. That's cool. All right. And I want to talk a little bit about lettering as well. So what I have done, I've actually just used my ruler. If I dropped it on the ground. I just used my ruler to kind of measure things out right here, right? So I gave a little bit of space up here. So I gave about 1/8 of an inch between the top of the word bubble and the border. And I wanted to make sure I had enough space around me here. And then I measured out. So these words, I've done a little bit larger because I wanted to make sure that we can see it when we scan it in and crop it all the way down. So these are like 3/16 of an inch tall. And, you know, if you're thinking about lettering, you're like, oh man, I have terrible, terrible handwriting. Well, that's okay, because that's something you can work on. And I once heard someone say that if you have bad handwriting and you're worried about lettering, then instead of writing the letters and the words, try drawing the letters and words. Because if you're not bad at drawing, well, then heck, I imagine that you could draw some letters. So I've put in some guidelines here that I've just used my ruler to do. And so I've just made sure to make and in that way I can make my words and my letters pretty even. I've worked a lot of my lettering over the years. I'm still learning a lot. One thing I'd like to begin implementing and haven't done as much as I would like is this little device. And this is an Ames lettering guide. I don't know if you've ever seen one before, but an Ames lettering guide helps people make letters. So if you make comic books by hand, which not as many people do anymore, I don't think, but if you make them by hand, then you can use this guide to make straight lines and to give yourself a little bit of space in between your words, so you're not cramping them all together. This is not a tutorial on how to use an Ames guide. There are tutorials out there, and who knows, maybe in the future I will make a tutorial on how to use an Ames guide when I am better practiced at it. But for right now, I just use my standard old ruler and make some spaces for myself. So like I said, these are like 3/16 of an inch, and I put 1/16 of an inch between each of them to give just a little bit of space. And then when I go in, I just go in carefully, and this is an 05 micron pen, which if I were doing smaller letters, I would probably use an 03. So just go in and retrace my pencils. Can I have some cookies? All right, and that's not too bad. So what I would do next is I would go in and ink all of this just with my pens, and then we will move on to our next step. So I think we're gonna call it there. So thank you for joining me for session 3. I'll see you in session 4, which will be our final session together, where we will talk about basically producing this, how to take it from your final draft into a printed form. And so we'll look at some of the nitty-gritty with that. Thank you for joining me, and I will see you next time.